Every appliance category has at least one brand that cracks a service rate under 10% in the first year. Washers, dryers, ranges, dishwashers, every single one of them has a brand that clears that bar. Refrigerators don't. The single best counter-depth refrigerator brand in the entire dataset still came in at 10.1%. The best one on the lot couldn't make a list that practically every other appliance category clears without much effort. You're about to hear exactly why that number exists. And it isn't bad luck. And it isn't one bad brand. It's a design fighting physics. And physics doesn't lose. A refrigerator runs every single minute of every single day for the 10 to 15 years you own it. More hours of continuous operation than almost anything else in your house, never getting the rest a washer or a dryer gets between cycles. Most people buy one once a decade, on a name they recognize, with no real way to have built up personal experience across enough brands to know which ones actually deserve that trust. You get one shot at this purchase, and the bill shows up whether the machine holds up or not. My name's Walt Renner. Normally on this channel I run a full countdown, 10 brands, sometimes more, worst to best. This time I'm doing something different, and I want to tell you why before I get into it, because it matters more than the picks themselves. I went looking for every brand worth covering in this category the same way I always do, and the honest data pointed to 2 real picks, not a padded list of 10. So here's what you're getting. A handful of real failures worth knowing about, fast. And exactly 2 refrigerators I'd put my own money on, covered in real depth. Before I go any further, I want to mention something once, because it matters, and then I won't bring it up again. There's more to how I actually run these investigations than fits into any single video. The full bench test breakdown, how I source and verify every number before it goes in a script, the brands and products that get ruled out before they ever make a list. I wrote it all up on my website, links just below. I won't mention it again. If it interests you, it's there. Here's exactly how I got here, because you should be able to check my work instead of just trusting it. 4 sources, and I'll tell you the bias built into each one as I use it. First, Yale Appliance's own service call data. A real retailer, not a lab. They've got a financial stake in which brands look good, and their numbers only cover the brands they actually sell, which means some major names, Samsung included, simply aren't in their data at all. That's a real limitation, worth flagging honestly right up front. What that bias buys you in exchange is something almost nobody else publishes. How many of the machines they actually sold came back for a repair call in the real world, not a lab. 33,190 service calls behind their most recent published numbers. Second, Consumer Reports Member Survey, a completely different method. Predicted reliability built from owner-reported data and engineering assessment. No retail relationship with any of these brands. When a retailer's real-world service data and a member survey with 0 financial stake in the outcome land on the same brand independently, that's worth more than either one alone. When they disagree, and they do, in one specific place I'm going to show you exactly where, that disagreement tells you something too, and I'm not going to smooth it over just to give you a cleaner story. Third, the actual mechanism behind each failure, not just the fact that it happens. A number telling you a brand fails often is useful. Understanding why tells you whether that's fixable by picking a different model in the same lineup, or baked into a design decision every single brand in this category has made the same way, regardless of logo, regardless of price. Fourth, real conversations with the people who actually work on these machines for a living, the ones who see the failure firsthand instead of reading about it in a survey response filed months after the fact. Here's the shape of what's coming. I'm going to move fast through the brands with real, current problems, because the evidence there doesn't need much time to make its point. Then I'm going to slow way down on the 2 picks that are actually worth your money, because that's where the real decision lives. A handful of names carry real, documented weight right now. Kenmore and Frigidaire both post real reliability weaknesses in current data. Frigidaire's parent company, Electrolux, carries its own separate current complaint pattern of drawers breaking and units failing within months of delivery, meaning the same corporate parent shows up twice in this category, wearing 2 different names. KitchenAid is a genuine split-decision brand on its own. Consumer Reports puts it in the low to middling reliability tier, while Yale's real service data ranks it well. 2 credible sources landing on opposite conclusions about the exact same name, which is worth knowing before you assume either verdict is the full picture. And 4 more names: Whirlpool, Maytag, Kenmore again, and Genair, all trace back to a single parent company and a wire harness defect serious enough to become a class action lawsuit, a genuine fire and shock risk in wiring that runs through the freezer door, often surfacing right around the time the 1-year warranty runs out. That's a lot of ground covered fast, and it's covered fast on purpose. Every one of those names could carry a full entry of its own in a different kind of video. What matters here is the pattern underneath all of it. Brand recognition and actual reliability keep turning out to be 2 separate things in this category, more often than in almost any other appliance this channel has investigated. Everything else traces back to one part: the ice maker. It's the single most serviced component Yale Appliance sees across every appliance category in their entire store, not just refrigerators, ahead of every other repair call they log by a wide margin. Once you understand why, you can't unsee it. On most French door refrigerators, the ice maker sits inside the fresh food compartment, the refrigerator side, which your machine is working every minute of every day to hold around 37 degrees, above freezing, on purpose, so your milk doesn't turn into a brick. Right next to that, in the same general space, the same machine is being asked to make ice and hold it at or below 32 degrees, permanently. The refrigerator is fighting itself every single day, forever. What you get out of that fight is exactly what you'd expect: leaks, fill lines that freeze solid, chutes that clog, door seals that give out early, and a bucket of slush instead of ice cubes. That's not a bad brand doing something wrong. That's a design losing an argument with physics it never had a real chance of winning. No amount of brand loyalty fixes a problem that's built into the layout itself. Every manufacturer selling a French door refrigerator with an indoor ice system is running the exact same fight: a warm zone forced to host a cold-only component. And the specific brand only changes how well the engineering manages that conflict, not whether the conflict exists at all. That's the baseline every single name on this list is competing against before a single logo enters the conversation. Step 1 is the boring answer, and it happens to be the correct one. If what you actually want is a refrigerator that runs 15 years and never sees a technician, buy a top freezer. No dispenser in the door, no ice through the front, no water line running up through the door hinge. Consumer Reports has said this for years, and almost everyone ignores it, because a top freezer looks like something out of a grandparent's kitchen. But the reasoning is airtight, and it's the same conclusion this investigation reached from a completely different direction. Top freezers score the highest predicted reliability of any style that exists, for the simplest possible reason: they don't have the parts that break. You cannot have a failure in a component that was never installed in the first place. There's a real trade-off worth naming directly instead of just selling you on the upside. A top freezer means bending down for the items you actually reach for most often. And it means giving up the indoor water and ice most people have gotten used to expecting as standard. That's a genuine lifestyle compromise, not a hidden downside I'm glossing over. The honest question is whether that compromise is worth trading for a machine with dramatically fewer parts capable of failing on you at 2 in the morning. One thing worth knowing before any model number gets mentioned. Manufacturers change model numbers constantly, usually because of a color variant or which specific store is carrying it, not because the actual machine changed underneath. If you go looking for what's named here and find something 1 letter or 1 digit off, that's very likely the same refrigerator wearing a different sticker for a different retailer. Check that the cubic feet and the dimensions match what's listed here, and you've almost certainly got the right one, regardless of the exact suffix on the box. The specific pick is the Whirlpool WRT 518 SZFM. 18 cubic feet, 28 inches wide, and the ice maker is an add-on kit rather than a standard feature, which, in this context, is a genuine advantage, not a shortcoming. It runs around $800. That's a plain machine, and plain machines last, because there's simply less inside them capable of failing. Fewer seals, fewer motors, fewer places for the fight against physics described a minute ago to even have a battlefield to fight on. Step 2 is the one most people actually want, and I'm not going to lecture you out of it. Most people want a French door. If that's you, here's exactly what the data points to. Consumer Reports scores Bosch as the top French door brand in their entire rating system. And here's the detail that actually matters. Among every French door brand Consumer Reports rates, only 2 earned a genuinely good mark for predicted reliability. 2 out of the entire market. Bosch was one of them, alongside Fisher and Paykel. Separately, Yale Appliance's own service call numbers, built from actual repair visits rather than a prediction model, put Bosch near the top of their entire lineup too. 2 organizations, 2 completely different measurement methods, one forecasting future reliability, and one counting how often a technician actually gets called out, and they both land on the same name. When that happens, that's the name worth trusting. Think about what it actually takes for 2 organizations with opposite methodologies to agree. Consumer Reports is forecasting forward from engineering assessment and owner-reported patterns. Yale is looking backward at what's already broken and already been repaired. A brand could easily score well on one of those and poorly on the other, the same way KitchenAid did earlier in this video. Strong by one method's measure and middling by the others. Bosch scoring well on both, using 2 approaches that don't share a single data point in common, is a much harder result to fake than either score would be sitting on its own. The specific pick is the Bosch B36 CD52S, 21.6 cubic feet, counter depth. Until recently, this exact refrigerator was sold as the B36 CD50S. Same machine, same ice system, same counter depth, just bumped up a couple digits in the model number. If you find the older 50 on a closeout somewhere, that's the identical box for less money, worth grabbing. It runs around $3,400, though prices swing noticeably between big box retailers, so it's worth shopping around before you commit to one specific store. Here's the disagreement worth naming honestly, instead of quietly resolving it into a clean answer. Yale's service data says LG is the most reliable counter-depth refrigerator they sell, the best in their entire store. Consumer Reports flags LG French doors as more prone to compressor trouble than the competition. Same brand, two credible sources, opposite conclusions. Both are telling the truth. LG moved to a linear compressor design years ago and ran into real, documented trouble with it. Trouble that ended up in court. And that happened. It's not something to wave away. But LG also sells an enormous number of refrigerators. And when you sell millions of anything, even a genuinely small failure rate produces a mountain of angry people online. Yale's own numbers put that specific compressor failure at right around 1% over 5 years, out of more than 160,000 service calls behind their data. 1% isn't nothing. If it's your refrigerator, it's 100%. But it's also not the brand being junk, which is what a scroll through the internet is going to tell you. Anybody handing you a perfectly clean answer on this specific question is selling you something. This is exactly the kind of nuance a countdown format tends to flatten out. A ranked list wants a clean verdict, avoid or buy, and LG genuinely doesn't fit into either box honestly. It's the best performing brand by one legitimate measure and a real, documented risk by another at the same time. And pretending otherwise, just to make the video simpler, would mean lying to you about what the data actually shows. Now here's the part I actually care about most, and it isn't a brand name at all. Before you buy any refrigerator, any brand, any price point, find out who's going to fix it. Not whether it can theoretically be repaired somewhere. Who, specifically in your area, with a phone number you could call this afternoon, because that's the person who has to look you in the eye eventually and tell you a part's on back order with no arrival date, and mean it. A reliable machine that nobody local will actually touch is worse than an average machine with a good technician 20 minutes down the road. That's not on a spec sheet. That's not in a member survey. That's the whole ball game, and it's the part almost nobody tells you. Call before you buy, not after. A 5-minute phone call to a repair shop in your own town, asking directly whether they service the brand and stock parts for it, tells you something no lab test or owner survey ever will. What actually happens the day this machine breaks down in your own kitchen, on your own schedule, with your family standing around waiting on it. Every number in this video describes a national average. That phone call describes your specific situation, and it's worth more than any of them. While we're on the subject of gaps in the data, let's talk about Samsung directly, because you'll notice it hasn't come up as a specific pick or a specific avoid entry, and that's worth explaining instead of leaving it out silently. Samsung doesn't appear in Yale's numbers because Yale doesn't carry the brand, which means there's simply no data from that source to cite either way. That's an honest gap, not a hidden one. Separately, in this channel's own past investigation into this category, Consumer Reports data showed every single Samsung French door model tested scoring below average, with 0 earning their recommended designation, and the brand ranking dead last in the built-in category, despite scoring well on simple top freezer models. Draw your own conclusion from that. I'm telling you what the data actually shows, rather than pretending the gap isn't there. One more thing, and I'm telling you what's being left out on purpose instead of quietly skipping past it. There's real chatter online about refrigerator class action settlements and checks waiting for people, beyond the wire harness lawsuit already named here. Some of it is legitimate. A meaningful amount of it is sites farming clicks off search terms like refrigerator settlement check. I couldn't independently verify most of what's circulating beyond what's already cited in this video, so I'm not repeating it. If I can't check it, I don't say it. And that rule doesn't bend just because a claim would make for a better hook. And I'm not going to hand you a list of 10 refrigerators with 10 links just to give you more to click through. 2 real picks is what the evidence actually supports, and padding that out further would mean recommending something I don't actually stand behind. I'd rather a video feel short than feel padded. If 10 real entries genuinely exist in a category, you'll get 10, receipts attached to every one. If 2 exist, like here, you get 2, and I'll tell you exactly why the other 8 didn't make the cut, instead of quietly stretching the evidence to fill the space anyway. Here's the whole thing, fast, before you go. Ice makers are the single most serviced part in this entire category, because the design puts a below-freezing component inside a compartment deliberately held above freezing. Kenmore, Frigidaire, Electrolux, KitchenAid, Whirlpool, Maytag, and JennAir all carry real, current weaknesses, several tracing back to the same parent companies wearing different logos. The 2 real picks. The Whirlpool WRT 518S ZFM, if you want the boring, correct 15-year answer, and the Bosch B36 CD52S, if you want the French door most people actually want, backed by 2 independent sources landing on the same name using 2 methods that share nothing in common. Tell me in the comments which refrigerator is sitting in your kitchen right now. I read every single one of these, and if you've got a repair story that confirms or contradicts anything here, I want to hear it. If someone in your life is about to buy on a name alone, assuming that's protection enough, send them this before they buy. And since finding out who actually services a machine mattered more than any spec in this entire video, wait until you see what happens when I run that same question against extended warranty companies. Most of them are betting you'll never actually think to ask it, and that bet is the entire business model. One last thing, since this video looked different from what you're used to seeing on this channel. If the evidence supports 10 real entries next time, you'll get 10. If it supports 2, like it did here, you'll get 2. The number was never the point. The evidence behind it was. And a short, honest list beats a long one padded out with brands that never actually earned their spot on it.